Peace, peace. This your host, Selah Shalom, and this is the Cosmon teachings in the words of Jehovah and his angel ambassadors from the Cosmon Bible, or WASPI. And the topic of discussion today is going to be called the first writing since the flood and the 10 lost tribes. This time period coincided on earth as the 20th arc cycle after the creation of man, the Ark of Mos, and the 20th Etherian god Thor, who ruled the heavens and the earth for 3,200 years, the length of the 20th arc cycle. And the purpose of Thor and his host of 30 million Etherian angels was to establish with man the first written system using images and symbols of earthly things in nature, and taught man the art of engraving images out of wood and stone. And the time period of the 20th arc cycle is 13,553 BC to 12,200 BC, which is the length of the 20th arc cycle, 3,200 years. So within this time period is when this first written system was revealed to man. And this is the same period of the 10 lost tribes. And we're going to get into all this. Now, the Lord's fourth book, chapter 1, verses 1, 3, and 5, it states, "By altars and temples, and by idols and images, and by painted signs and engraved words, God foresaw that the knowledge of one generation could be handed down to the next. And though all these things are false in fact, as a written word is not a word, but an image of an idea which hath been spoken, so by symbols convey God the living truth." Verse 3. "God commanded man to make stone and wooden images and engraving also of everything upon the earth, and man so made them according to his own knowledge. And God sent his angels down to man to inspire him in the workmanship of images and engravings. And man thus accomplished the commandments of God. And these were the first writings since the flood, other than such as were kept sacred amongst the Ions. And of this manner were the writings, to wit: a picture of a man was a man, a picture of a tree was a tree, a picture of a bird was a bird, and even so was everything represented by its own name and image." So here it shows the first written system after the flood. It was a language of symbols, by the images of things in nature, and God sent his angels to teach man these arts. So here it shows that the angels have a lot to do with the advancement of humans. And in verse 8 it states, "Then God said, When thou hast made the picture of a spear, behold, it is a spear. And when thou desires to show which way a man goes, thou shalt add to the graven image the likeness of a spear and the way it points. Shall show the way of man goes. Even so shall thou express the going of everything on earth and in heaven." Verse 9. "Thus man made a written language, and in every region of the earth by many men were these things done, according to the light of God upon them. So accomplished they the written language of thousands of tribes of men." Verse 10. God said, "This shall be called the panic language," in parentheses, Asioga, which is the panic name for the panic language in Pan, "because it is made of earthly images, and in after ages whoso desires to find the first written words of man shall have recourse to the pictures of all things on earth, and in the waters, and in the air above the earth." So here it states that the first written language was called the panic language in reference to the continent of Pan, where the first races of men first used these symbols and images as a language. On the continent of Pan was these things first done before the flood. Now it also states in every region of the land, the tribes of men were inspired by God to accomplish this first language. So this proves another tribe didn't come to teach another tribe a language. It was the inspiration of God through the tribal chiefs or rabbi. This language was accomplished. Now, in the Lord's fourth book, chapter 2, verse 5, it states, "The Lord said, Behold, man hath attained to written knowledge. Now shall he have books, and learn to keep records, after the manner of the angels in heaven. Then God sent down to man, speaking both by the soul and by the voice, in different places and to different rabbis, teaching them how to make books of skin and of bark, and of cloth, for the graven words and images which had been taught. So here it states that it was the angels of heaven that came down and taught men how to keep records and make books, after the manner of how angels in the heavens keep records of earthly and heavenly affairs. So here again, it is the angels showing man how to develop himself in these talents given. Now we're going to move into the 10 lost tribes which took place at the same time of the first written language. Now, in all these countries, China, India, Egypt, and Persia, there is still in existence a legend that long ago the chosen of God went on a long journey in search of their ancient brethren, and then 10 tribes were lost in the wilderness. A similar record is in the Ezra Bible, calling the lost tribes Hebrews, who were in fact faithists or believers in the Great Spirit. Further on in this work, it shows how Ezra obtained his version from the Egyptian and the Persian records. In this work, it also relates what became of the lost tribes who became the Persians, in fact, whence sprang the great Zarathustra. And this is what we're going to be talking about, and this coincides with the King James Bible, Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, where it states, "And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech." This one language and one speech, the first written system mentioned earlier, the Panic language, a language of symbols and images of things in nature. And in verse 2 it states, "And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there." This verse explains a people coming from the east and settling in the lands of what is now Persia and Iraq. And it is these people I'm about to explain where they were coming from and who they were. Now in Owaspi, in the Lord's fourth book, chapter 2, verse 6 through 10, it states, referring to the tribes of Ham or Chem, "In these days the lands of Japheth, Shem, and Ham were inhabited by millions of Ahuans and Gans, but the countries lying between them were inhabited by Ahuans only." Verse 7, "God spoke to the people of Ham, saying, Behold, there are 2 other countries inhabited by kin of your kin, flesh of your flesh, and they are Gans also. And they speak and write with the Panic words, even as ye do. And the Hamites inquired, How far are the 2 other countries? Where are they? The Lord said, Gather together 1,000 men and women, and I will lead you to your brethren, whose forefathers were also saved from the flood, saved by the sacred little people, the Ions. Provide ye an ox and asses and all things required for a journey of 4 years, and I will lead thee." Verse 10. The Hamites obeyed God and provided themselves a command. The Hamites obeyed God and provided themselves as commanded into 2 companies of 1,000 each, equipped they themselves, and started on their journey for Japheth and Shem. So here God tells the Hamites that there are 2 other tribes in far off regions that survived the flood as ye did, and they speak the same language, which is the Panic language. So the Kemites inquired, and God provided the Kemites with the journey of 2 bands of 1,000 people each, making it 2,000 people for the journey of 4 years to the lands of Shem and Japheth. Now in the Lord's fourth book, chapter 2, verse 11 through 14, he makes reference to Japheth. Verse 11, "Then spoke God to the people of Japheth, saying, Behold, there are 2 other countries inhabited by kin of your kin, flesh of your flesh, and they are Gans also. And they speak and write with the Panic words, even as ye do." Verse 12, "The Japhethians said, How far are the 2 other countries? Where are they?" Verse 13, "The Lord said, Gather together 1,000 men and women, and I will lead you to your brethren, whose forefathers were also saved from the flood, saved by the sacred little people, the Ions. Provide ye in all things require a 4-year journey, and I will lead thee." In verse 14, "The Japhethians obeyed God and provided themselves as commanded into 2 companies of 1,000 each, equipped they themselves, and started for Ham and Shem." So here God tells the Japhethites that they are 2 other tribes in far off regions that survived the flood as ye did, and they speak the same language, which is the Panic language. So the Japhethites inquired And God provided the Japhethites with the journey of 2 bands of 1,000 people each, making it 2,000 people for the journey of 4 years to the lands of Ham and Shem. Now the Lord's 4th book, chapter 2, verse 15 and 16, it refers to Shem. Verse 15. Then spoke the Lord to the people of Shem in the